Oh, I'm not muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then otherwise it'll be like a. Should I be muted? Hello, everyone. This is our presentation for DevPsych Beyond the Parent Communication Log, Building Effective Homeschool Connections Involving Parents and Student Learning. So we're going to start our presentation by just getting into why we're talking about parent communications at all. So the first thing is that we all have to do parent communications. So we're framing it with, we're all required to do a parent communication log because we're getting certified as teachers. So Indiana developmental standards say that we as secondary school teachers need to have the ability to apply skills and strategies and establish a collaborative relationship with parents, guardians, other professionals, and community partners. So the standards clearly think that this is an important thing we need to do. But why is that? So the reason that the state of Indiana wants us to do this is because research firmly shows that connections between home and school are very important for students. As you can see from this slide, all areas like academic achievement, learning motivation, attendance, homework, and other areas as well have been found in academic research to be positively affected if a student's home and their school are well connected. So moving on. The reason for this comes down to what's called a Meso System. So parents and schools form part of what's called a Meso System that exists around students. And that's just this idea that a student has immediate connections in their environment. So this could be their school, their church, their friends, and any other regular contacts that exist in a student's life are all having a huge impact on that student's learning. So it's not just that a kid is born a genius or a kid is born not academically achieving. It's that all of these factors are playing in. And if these factors are connected, so for example, if the teacher and the student's parents are regularly communicating and backing each other up, then that has been shown to be really good for the student. So for example, let's say the school is using positive youth development and supporting the idea that students shouldn't be using drugs. If the parents are in contact, they can also give that same exact support at home, and those connections overlap. And now it's not just that the students being told by the school and being lectured about not using drugs, it's that all these different factors throughout their life are connecting and making the student know that this is something that I should be doing in my life. And there are three big effects that parental involvement has that affect a child's learning. So the first two are very similar. The first one is a parent can talk with a teacher to learn if a child is progressing throughout school. So for example, the teacher might say, mom and dad, your student's doing great. In school, maybe you can give them support in other areas like sports or clubs or whatever, or you can say, wow, your child's really having a tough time in school, and the parent will know how much they need to help the student. And tied to that is number two, the parent can learn from a teacher what skills and abilities the child has and is kind of rocking with and needs to be held up. So a student could be really good at math. So maybe the parents need to make sure the student is given opportunities to do math, whereas he might be struggling English. So the parents will know, oh, we need to help our student with English, give him books, things like that. And finally, going back to those connections in the Meso System, a parent can learn what material is actually being covered in class so that they're reinforcing what is actually going on in the classroom and helping their student in that way.
Now, with regard to the barriers to the homeschool connection,
We kind of broke this down into essentially 5 main barriers: psychological and attitudinal, structural and logistical, lack of school resources. Language and cultural barriers are also important. And then the final one is socioeconomic status. Of these 5, the 3 top ones are lack of school resources, perceived lack of family willingness to partner, and logistical challenges that we've found. So with regard to psychological and attitudinal, this is kind of looking at essentially the perspectives from the teacher and then also from the parents. So perceived lack of family willingness to partner. So this is kind of looking at from the school's perspective, are families willing to partner? Are they willing to kind of get themselves involved in the activities of the school? And so this can be also kind of broken down essentially into 2 other pieces, whereas is there lack of parent participation and support for these activities? Is there a lack of interest or comfort from parents? So oftentimes parents who aren't involved may have had negative experiences in their childhood with school, and so that'll impact kind of whether they want to participate in their child's activities in the school. The second piece is the lack of school willingness to partner. So this is looking at it from the teacher staff perspective, essentially. So are they ready to partner? And one of them is the implementation issue. So there might be a new program that's starting and they're trying to figure out what exactly is going to work and how it's going to work. So this might kind of deter them from reaching out to the families, essentially. And then also the staff attitudes towards families as well plays into that. And then finally, lack of communication. So this is just kind of the logistics of phone numbers changing, email addresses changing. And this was from the kind of the school perspective. They kind of found that with all these communication methods changing, it was a little bit difficult to reach out to parents. And then the second is structural and logistical. So this deals with time constraints. So just from the teacher perspective, but also from the parents' perspective, if as parents, you have to transport maybe other children to different schools or to different extracurricular activities, there's childcare. Maybe parents are working multiple jobs at the same time. And so the schedules just don't align with the school schedule in terms of meeting with the school to work things out. The third thing is the lack of school resources. So this is very, very big one with regard to barriers to kind of developing that homeschool connection. So this is the specifically like staff time. How much time do they have? They're prepping for multiple courses, grading and things like that. Funding also plays into this and resources. And then the third piece is the multilingual outreach. So this deals with kind of what I'm going to talk about next, which is the language barriers as well. So language and cultural barriers. So oftentimes many immigrant families are unfamiliar with the US school system and the expectations. So there are different expectations within different families, I guess. And so the research kind of showed that many immigrant families saw the role of the teacher as the educator, and they tried not to interfere with that role in a sense. There are also language barriers as well. So if English is not your first language, English being used primarily in the school setting, it creates a little bit of difficulty. And then the final one is the socioeconomic status. So with regard to this, we looked at, the study showed that particular strategies, so oftentimes low SES parents would use unconstructive, they would also use constructive involvement with regard to like if a student needed help with homework. And oftentimes what this showed was 6 months later, the reading scores were actually lower due to this. And so some of the strategies that low SES individuals used were performance-oriented teaching, so kind of focused on getting the performance outcomes rather than kind of mastering that learning, and then control and negative effect.
Okay, so with these barriers, then we need to figure out how we can overcome these to create kind of that system of relationship and communication between parents and schools. So this slide just kind of outlines there are 5 key facilitators to overcoming these barriers that we found in our research. And I'll talk a little bit more about each one in detail. So we have develop a definition of family engagement, create support at the district level, use proactive and positive family outreach, embed family engagement practices in existing school systems. And then number 5 is build and strengthen partnerships between families and school personnel. So the first one, developing a definition of family engagement. This needs to be a definition that's thought up between families, teachers, and administration. So everyone's involved in the process, so that we can get input and feedback from people at the administrative level. So our principal, our school president, vice principal, dean of students, any disciplinary staff. Teachers, so anyone in the classroom or our counseling team, and then parents, grandparents, caretakers, family, and then students themselves to kind of look at how we want to go about having family engagement and what it should look like. This can present a problem, as we laid out earlier, because there are different ways that families support their children, and there are many different ways that families are oriented. So this definition should really acknowledge the variety of important ways that families support their children. So it needs to look at the differences in cultural background, socioeconomic status, even things such as like religious background, so that they can be like this basis of understanding of where they want this engagement to go. So creating this culture of understanding very early on is key in building these relationships. The second facilitator is creating support at the district level. So we want to develop clearly defined roles between what types of people are supposed to be doing what. Okay, so the administrative personnel want to know what the teachers are going to do in their classrooms. The teachers need to know what the parent support at home is going to look like. And it kind of goes in this whole circle. So you can see this chart on the left kind of outlines like the Board of Education, superintendent, learning community, school administration, teacher, and parent, and how all of those parts need to be moving in a circular direction to create this support. These also need to lay out some expectations and priorities and setting goals to improve educational services and student outcomes. Number 3 is using proactive and positive family outreach. So this needs to be something that's implemented very early in the school year. The example on the right is a prototype of a letter that a student could, or a teacher could send home with a student for their parents or guardians, that just introduces the teacher and outlines any expectations or questions that they might have for parents, and kind of starts to build that positive family teacher relationship very early on. So this helps with building the community between parents and families and the school, and kind of start to foster these relationships. So this should be also, I've said this before, but it should be between the school and the families and the teachers and the families. And then obviously there's that school and teachers bit as well. Numbers 4 and 5 are a little bit less lengthy in detail. So we need to embed family engagement practices in existing school systems. So we can't just recreate all of the school systems that we have. Our schools already have ways of operating, and so we need to find ways to fit family engagement practices in these school systems. And finally, we need to build and strengthen partnerships between families and school personnel. And this can take a variety of roles, but it's important that families and parents and guardians know that they are working on the same team as those inside the school, so that we just create this this culture of understanding and relationships with one another.
Okay. And then going along with what Kat said, building that strong homeschool connection, it does rely heavily upon the parents, but also the teachers. So everything from this research with types of parental involvement also applies to teachers as well. So good parents are like good teachers. So here are the types of parental involvement that we looked at. We have authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and then indifferent / neglectful. So we're going to take a look at each of those and how those apply to both being a good parent and a good teacher. Before looking at each type, so from our research, we found that each type is categorized by what is known as demandingness and responsiveness. So a parent who is high in demandingness, they're going to want to integrate their child into family and society. They're going to have maturity demands, high supervision and discipline, and then responsiveness would be respect for that child's individuality, respect for their self-autonomy, self-regulation, and self-assertion. And that parent is going to be sensitive towards that child, warm, loving. So trying to find a balance between those two, demandingness and responsiveness. So to start off, we have authoritative parents. So I'll begin by saying what an authoritative parent might sound like. So I want you to do well in school because it is important for you later on in life. I'm here for you. So that authoritative parent is going to be high in responsiveness. As you said, I'm here for you, but they're also going to be high in demandingness. They're going to have high academic expectations for their child, but they're going to be with them there each step of the way. So an authoritative parent is warm, affectionate, supportive, encourages independence inside and outside of the classroom through extracurricular activities, whatever it may be. And they're also going to give rationale for their practices. I want you to do well in school because it's important for you later on in life. Maybe you won't understand now, but someday you will. Bidirectional communication. So that means actually having conversation with the child, not telling them what to do, not giving any of that rationale. So having communication with their child. And yeah, so high demandingness, high responsiveness, that's authoritative. Authoritarian, I want you to do well in school because I said so. So as you can see there, this type of parent or this type of teacher isn't really giving any rationale for what they believe. So an authoritarian parent or teacher is going to be low in responsiveness, but then high in demandingness and low in responsiveness. So authoritarian parents, teachers, they're going to expect obedience. They're very driven by power, lack rationale. Yes, high in demandingness, low in responsiveness. And then there are permissive parents or teachers. I want you to do well in school, but I won't hold you to too high expectations. So they have low expectations for the adolescent. They're dismissive, unconcerned, low demandingness, high responsiveness. They love their kid. They want them to do well, but if they don't do well, that's okay. Whatever. They're permissive. And then finally, there is indifferent and neglectful parenting style. Indifferent or neglectful parent might say, I'm too concerned with my own problems to care whether or not you do well in school. So this child's not getting a lot of attention at home. Their parents may be cold, distant. They have no expectation. There's no bidirectional communication. They have low demandingness, low responsiveness. So that would be an indifferent or neglectful parent. So this led us to conclude that the authoritative parental involvement is best, which is backed up by research. So why authoritative? So this applies again to both parents and teachers. They should be authoritative to have the most positive outcomes. Authoritative parents, they provide emotional security. So that child is going to experience comfort and independence. It's going to increase their want to learn. And it's going to decrease their fear of failure. So that explanation for actions, that rationale allows the child to have awareness and understanding of their own parents' values or their teachers' values, their morals and goals. So that importance of education. And then, yes, the bidirectional communication. So that it's going to help that child develops interpersonal skills, which there's also been research to show that child will become more, quote, popular using those interpersonal skills. And then this is all, to kind of wrap it all up, this is super important to talk about parental involvement, building the homeschool connection, because we found in our research that parental involvement declines during adolescence, mainly in middle school. The reason being, to explain this, is parents want to respect their child's need for autonomy. So it's hard for parents to find that balance between, okay, I don't want to be too involved because I want my child, to like me. So how do you find that balance between parental involvement, but also respect for that adolescent's autonomy? So further research needs to be done on how parents can find that balance. And yeah, this is coming at a super important time in these children's lives because parental involvement is decreasing. And that is it. I mean, any final words, guys? All right. Thank you.
I don't know.
How long was that?